Welcome, friends, to the first audiobook recording of Secrets of Earth, titled Tulip by Fate Tales. A long time ago, when the earth was young, Mother Nature and Father Time came together with great power and hope. They created a thorn bush. But this bush only had one thorn. But the bush would only last one night every 100 years. Yet, what made this even stranger is that it will grow in a different part of the world every time. And once one touches the thorn, if chosen, their whole world will change. Chapter 1. One faithful day, a girl, whose memory was lost and past, was running. Since the memory was forgotten, the girl couldn't remember why she had been running. What she had remembered was that she pricked her index finger on a bush that only had one thorn. She fainted only mere seconds later. Once she awoke, she found her dress was one of white petals, with a sky-blue line that wrapped around her waist, traveled down the front, and met the bottom of her dress. Her hair was golden blonde like the sun. It naturally covered her left eye. And her skin was the color of slightly wet yellow sand. She didn't wear any shoes upon her soft, small feet. However, what truly fascinated her the most were her hands. They looked like leaves. They started out pure green at the tips of her fingers, but then faded to the smooth sand color once the green had reached the middle of her palm. When she turned her hands over, she found her nails were perfectly painted green. But they weren't painted. They were actually green. She looked up. There were iron bars in front of her. There was also a semi-fat man on guard. He stood stunned and watching the beautiful girl that had been imprisoned. It wasn't the dirty scum he had finally been able to capture only hours before. He wondered how she, the most beautiful creature he had ever seen in his long, lonely life, got into the cell that he had thrown that wretched thief in. But it didn't matter anymore. So what if the thief had vanished? So what? Who cares? The stuff was returned, wasn't it? And after all, it was only a bit of stale bread. All he wanted at that moment was to have the young, magnificent girl set free. She was too innocent to be the horrible thing he caught before. And she didn't belong in a dirty hole of a place such as this. She looked deeply into his eyes and saw her own. They were blue. It was somewhat hard to tell at first, since it was her reflection in his eyes that were such a deep brown. But she could tell hers were bright, faithful, and young, the most beautiful ever known and seen. They were perfect sky blue. Where am I?" she asked. Her voice flowed smoothly like a river and was as rich as the richest chocolate. But the guard didn't respond. "Where am I?" she asked again with a crack in her luxurious voice. She felt like she had spoken for the first time in 1,000 years. But the fat, lonely guard just stood there in awe and would not return her response. She was starting to get aggravated. This man wasn't talking to her. Then she felt something gently wrap around her hand and up her wrist. which held her stable in a position on the cold stone floor. It was a bright green vine that had broken through the stone floor just to meet her. It was wrapped perfectly around her wrist and growing gently up her arm. "Tulip," the vine whispered. "You are Tulip." "Tulip," she repeated quietly. She didn't want the guard to hear her. It was bad enough he was right there, just watching her. She felt like she knew what that name meant, but she just couldn't figure it out. What was it? She thought hard for a moment, but there was no use. There wasn't any reference she had that she could use to identify the strange name she had received. In fact, she didn't have any reference to anything at all. "Huh?" The guard snapped out of his low trance. You're free to go. You shouldn't be here, anyway," he said to the lovely young girl. "You're not the wretched thief I had caught earlier." "Thank you." Tulip wasn't sure how to respond with the guard's strange behavior. It was as if he was scared of her, but she knew he wasn't. Why would he be? She wasn't that intimidating, was she? And besides, what's a thief? She wasn't a thief. Was he? Was she? That's the end of chapter 1. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, or this chapter. Tomorrow we will continue with chapter 2, and I hope to see you all there. Until then, my name's Fate, and if you enjoyed this chapter, leave a like and subscribe if you're new. And if you really have any suggestions on what you've heard so far, leave a comment down below. Thank you.